Are these brainless bitches made out of straw? Because they're grasping at them. Before we get into our video and into why I'm even doing this, let's just acknowledge that hell is frozen over. Just hell is frozen over. The Cheneys are endorsing Kamala. That's going to be interesting, and I think I know why. I know why that's happening. Remember in our last video, we talked about how the far right is trying to dismantle the Department of Homeland Security, a department that the Republican Party made in 2001 in the wake of 9/11. That alone would get a lot of old head Republicans upset because they busted their ass to make sure a grieving nation passed those bills to form the Department of Homeland Security. So, aside from that, there is a more personal reason why I am pursuing this series and nitpicking the Heritage Foundation as a whole. See, the Heritage Foundation and I have a very long history. Very long history. It stems back to the early 2000s as well, back when marriage equality wasn't legal and my two moms were trying to get married and couldn't, and only could under certain conditions, under certain times, due to legality and the non-legalities of it. There's a giant marriage certificate with a bunch of void stamps on them, and boy, that's all thanks to the Heritage Foundation and their efforts to push Prop 8, their efforts to push all these things that led to a lot of fucking trauma in my life. Because, not only did I have to grow up very fast, no insurance and hospitals, no politics, and know the Bible just to defend my family from legal shenanigans, Because of them, a lot of us with queer families around the time had to grow up very, very, very fast. So, I'm not doing this for the election. I'm not doing this series because I even care. I'm doing this series because I fucking hate the Heritage Foundation and the trauma it's led in my life to make me grow up too fast, to make me, to be there to support my family when, obviously, legally, the state didn't. Federally, my family was not recognized. They were legal strangers for the majority of their life, and it led to a lot of issues in my family. And you know what? I'm going to cause issues in the Heritage Foundation's family too, and that's why we're doing this series on Project 2025, the Heritage Foundation's last dying breath of a dinosaur, trying to make things back the way it was, back before we needed the Department of Homeland Security, back before them fags could get married, back before, shit. Bring back affirmative action. Give me those good old days back, fuckers. They won't. Shit. So I'm gonna have my cake and eat it too today. Let's start. Alright, so this chapter is written by a woman named Dr. Kyron Skinner. Now, Miss Skinner has been through a lot. I won't make fun of her too much because she actually has some credentials, and she actually worked herself from the ground up as a black woman in a very, very, very white world. So, I know what that's like, girl. Hang in there. She co-authored the Ronald Reagan in His Own Hands book. She worked as a foreign policy surrogate for the George W. Bush administration in 2004. Again, stemming back to the early 2000s, very much. She also advised Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich. She helped transition Trump into the White House, and then was appointed to the director of policy planning, and then she was given her own position in a newly formed organization called the Commission on Unalienable Rights, which was announced and created in 2019. Very interesting. I have to look that up. The Department of Unalienable Rights is basically the Heritage Foundation's in to our federal government. It It is all about the principles of natural law and natural rights. So, take that as you will. We'll have our cake and eat it too. She drew international attention in 2019 when stating that the U.S. competition with China would be especially bitter, unlike the Cold War and with the Soviet Union, which was, quote, a fight amongst the Western family. It's the time that we have a great power competitor that is not Caucasian. Woo! She knows how to get to the jugular. Some people have accused her of racism. Meh. Her term ended in 2019, but she has done some policy advising, namely, whatever she wrote for Project 2025, so let's get into it. Department of the State. The U.S. Department of the State mission is blatantly and regionally implement of the president's foreign policy priorities to serve the U.S. citizens abroad and advise the economic, foreign policy, and national security interests of the United States. So far, she's on the money. She hasn't said anything crazy yet, so let's dig deep. Let's wait for the crazy to happen. Since the U.S. founding, the U.S. Department have been American government as a tool of engagement with foreign governments out the world. La la la. Thank you for the job description. Well, what's it gonna get juicy? There are scores of fine diplomats who serve the president's agenda. Woo, excuse me. Even when helping to shape and interpret the agenda. At the same time, however, in all administrations, there is a tug-of-war between presidents and bureaucracies, and that resistance is much starker than under conservative presidents due to the fact large swaths of the State Department's workforce are left-wing, and predispositioned to disagree with a conservative policy agenda and vision. This does bring up very interesting points. Again, I think they're revealing too much. I feel like this information could be used against people, but hey, go off, girl. She got some complaints. I'm here to listen. I should not and cannot be this way. It should not and cannot be this way. The American people need and deserve a diplomatic machine fully focused on the national interest and throughout the election of the president, who international agenda for a nation. Okay, yeah, it should not be this way. History and context. Oh boy. When's she gonna take us back to? Founded in 1789. Should go taking me back in time. The Department of State was one of the cabinet-level agencies of the new American government. The first Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, oversaw a small staff, blah, 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 blah. They also predicted a demagogue would take over the state, but let's not talk about that. In theory, the State Department is a principal agency responsible for carrying the president's foreign policy. La 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 la. That is some history. Blah 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 blah. The U.S. Commission Nationals, 21st century, observed more than 20 years of State Department's crippled institution suffering from, quote, an ineffective organizational structure which regional and functional policies do not serve integrated goals, in which management and accountability and leadership are lacking. Ooh. That was under whose administration? Who said that? Who's that? The Hart-Rudman Commission. Ooh. The State Department's failures are not due to lack of resources. One has observed the department is significantly more disposal than it is the case of the end of the Cold War in the mid-90s. In the height of the Iraq-Afghanistan wars and major source, it is not a major source. A major source, if not the major source, of the State Department's ineffectiveness lies with its institutional belief that it is independent and that it knows best for the United States, sets its own foreign policies. Ooh. The next president can make the State Department more effective by providing clear foreign policy vision. What is the vision, girl? Tell me. Political leadership and bureaucratic leadership and support. Focusing on the State Department needs the goals of the president, blah, blah, will require the president's hand-picked political leadership, as well as foreign service and civil service personnel, where the president's vision and policy, blah, blah, blah. Oh, here we go. We're getting to the juicy part. Exert leverage during confirmation process. Exert leverage. Ooh. Notwithstanding the challenges of the slowness of the U.S. modern Senate, the confirmation process next to the president can exert leverage on the Senate if he or she is willing to place the State Department appointees directly into those roles. Ooh. Ooh, you want the State Department to boss around the Senate? Oh. Oh, she's like, these are your goons. Use them. I'm like, oh, fuck, girl. These, Mr. President, you have goons. It's called the State Department. Go bully the Senate. Lord. Assert leadership and appointment process. The next administration should assert leadership over and guidance to the State Department by placing political appointees in positions that do not require Senate confirmation, including senior advisors, principal deputy assistant secretaries, and deputy assistant secretaries. Given department size, the next administration should also increase the number of political appointees to manage it. Up the number of your goons to bully the Senate. If the Senate doesn't legally have to pick them, you pick them. So far, this is a lot of common sense stuff. Again, this is advice for mainly any president. Any president could use this advice, like Democratic or Republican. So he's giving me some really good advice, no matter who I am. To extent possible, all non-confirmed senior appointees should be selected by the president-elect's transition team or the new president's office. Oh, there it is. She wants the presidential transition team to be in charge of who is in the State Department. This is the first, because she used to be part of the presidential transition team. She's like, that thing I didn't have control over, I'd really like control over it now. Thank you. I see her. Girl, I see you. To extent all possible, support and train political appointees. Train them to bully the Senate, basically. Just kidding. Secretary of State should use his or her office, I like how she says that, in resources, regular coordination with political appointees, which would take form of strategy meetings, trainings, and other events. The Secretary also reasonable steps to ensure the State Department's political appointees connected with other departments of political blah, 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 blah. Train them, basically. Next section. Maximize value of career officials. You gonna give people raises? What's up? Career foreign service and civil service personnel must be leveraged. They must be leveraged for their expertise and commitment to the president's mission. This is some gangster shit. I'm sorry. Oh, okay, that's crossing the line. I didn't mean to say that. It is some mafioso shit. There. Less offensive. Indeed, the State Department, thousands of employees, are unparalleled with just cultural policy and administrative skills. The large numbers of them will be enormous resource to secretaries of state. Next section. Reboot ambassadors worldwide. A worldwide reboot? Ooh. All ambassadors should be required to submit letters of resignation at the start of a new administration. Oh, let me read that again. All ambassadors are required to submit letters of resignation at the start of the new administration. Previous Republican administrations have accepted resignations only the political ambassadors, who have allowed the foreign service ambassadors to retain their posts, sometimes for months or years into a new administration. Ooh, the next administration should go further. It should both accept resignations of all political ambassadors and quickly review and recess all career ambassadors. This review should commence well before the new administration's first day. Ooh. We're going to replace all these ambassadors. I want them resignations before he steps in office. This lady she is no joke. Okay, there's a lot of people in Project 2025 who are living jokes. She is no joke. She is going in for the jugular. She's going for your jobs. She wants the letters of resignations early so she can review them, so she can kick you out or replace you with someone more loyal. It all makes sense. Rightening the ship. And that's right as in like the direction right. Ooh. Ensuring the State Department accountable for serving American citizens require review retroactivity. The State Department negotiations funding upon inauguration. Senate should order immediate. Oh my God. Upon inauguration, the Secretary of State should order an immediate freeze on all efforts to implement unratified treaties and international agreements, all allocation of resources, foreign assistance, all domestic, international contracts and payments, hiring and recruiting decisions, etc. Just freeze everything. Before we inaugurate anybody, just freeze everything. Make the world stop before we get the president up in the door. Lord. The quality of this review is important than speed. Oof. The quality is more important than the speed. Oh, Lord. Implement repair. The State Department must change its handling of international agreements to restore constitutional governments. Under prior administrations, unnecessary institutional factors the department have caused numerous logistical challenges in negotiating, approving, and implementing treaties and agreements. Under the Biden administration, the State Department was considered significantly unreliable in terms of alignment and effectiveness in political leadership that invoked its secular 175. C-75, the authority to delegate its diplomatic capacity in other agencies, such as the Department of Homeland Security. Oh, there she is. She's tying it all together. She's like, and we hate them fuckers too. She's tying it all together. At the time of this publication, the State Department is seeking negotiation on a large-scale sovereignty eroding agreements that would at considerable economic and other costs of the American people, such as evaluated and approved our treaties. The Biden administration has luckily simply called them agreements. So you calling out how we call the language, how we use the language, or how these things are just called agreements and not called treaties or evaluations or what have you. Oof. She's going for your words. The next president should recalibrate how the State Department handles treaties and agreements, primarily restoring constitutionally processes. Okay, so this is the chapter I was waiting for, because this shit can be applied to either party. This whole chapter is just basically trying to say, hey, we need a clean house before we get another president up in there, so that way there's no issues, no accidental wars, no nothing. I feel like this, if any part of 2025, of Project 2025 is going to survive, it's probably going to be Miss Skinner's chapter. Because Miss Skinner chapter is bringing up some points. There's some scary points, but they're points. Coordinate with other agencies. Interact... environment is simply adjusted to minor presidential direction. Indeed, coordination among federal agencies, blah, 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 blah. Ideally, the Secretary of State, whose work is possible to angle foreign policy. Coordinate with Congress. Let's see how the State Department's supposed to coordinate with Congress. You know, because we just told you that she's going to bully the Senate, leverage the Senate, and leverage people's jobs. Let's see how we're going to coordinate with Congress. Congress is both a statutory and appropriations authority to impact the State Department's operations and among interests its key aspects of American foreign policy. The department must therefore take particular care of its interaction with Congress, since poor interactions with other negative impacts of the president's agenda. This will require a particularly strong leadership of the State Department's Bureau of Legislative Affairs. Ooh. The Secretary of State of Political Leadership should ensure all coordination with the White House regarding its congressional engagement. Ensure any State Department responsibly. Okay. This may lead to, for example, the President authorizing the State Department to engage with members of Congress and relevant committees on certain issues, including constitutional consultations, but to remain radio silent on volatile or designated issues in which the White House wants to be primarily the only voice, such as all authorized Department of engagements with Congress must be driven and handled by political appointees in conjunction with career officials and relevant expertise that are willing to work in concert with the president's political appointees on sensitive matters. So, she knows for a fact Congress can take money away from the Department of the State. She is suggesting not only that we play ball with Congress, that we act a bit more professionally. We bring in experts. We bring in people that know how to speak to Congress, you know, rather than having very, polarizing interactions between the White House and Congress. Try to ease those relations because the State Department knows for a fact that Congress can take away all its fucking money in a heartbeat. That's why. We can bully the Senate, but we can't bully Congress. We gotta play nice with them, okay, Mr. President? Lord. Oh, here we go. Here's the bullshit. I knew we'd hit some bullshit eventually. It was getting too good. Respond vigorously to Chinese threat. The State Department recently opened an office in China Coordination, or, quote, China House. Really? China House? Okay. China House. Okay. This office intended to bring together experts inside and outside the State Department to coordinate the U.S. government relations with China and advance our vision for an open and inclusive international system. Whether China House, she's just gonna call it China House. She's not gonna call it the Office of China Coordination. She's just gonna call it China House this whole chapter. Okay, girl. Whether China House will streamline the U.S. government's communication, consensus and action on China policy. The unit is a department on adequate and competent staff assigned to other bureaus within the State Department. Nevertheless, the concept is one a Republican administration should support mutus. Oh, she's using Latin up in here, but she's using the Latin word for mutual. So that's matulus mut. I'm gonna put it on the screen. Hopefully somebody who knows Latin will help me out. The Chinese Communist Party has been at war with the U.S. for decades. Now, it's been accepted that the government and the United States should depend on the U.S. diplomatic effort. Accordingly, the centralization efforts in one place is critical to this end. So, she wants to strengthen the connection with China House, which is something that the U.S. made, to better attack or infiltrate China. So, like I said, this document reveals way too fucking much and really should not be a public document. But here I am on YouTube fucking putting it on blast. Let's go, girl. View immigration and domestic security requirements. Oof. Why is it that we already had a department on immigration, and yet every other chapter they be talking about immigration, like it's like their ancestors didn't hop off the fucking boat in like the 1800s in New York? Like, who the fuck are you? Like, y'all romanticize this period in the early 1800s of Germans and Slavic people coming to New York and working dirt poor ass jobs. You romanticize that so fucking much, but when it comes to other people in the modern age, y'all act a fool. Notably, the State Department's most noteworthy challenge is the global state that has been handling of its immigration and domestic security issues, which are inexplicably related. Domestic security issues and immigrations are inexplicably related. Oh, they're so related, guys. Anyway, we don't have enemies from within. Girl, all our enemies are outside. There's nobody within our house trying to stab us. Girl, we know better. Girl, we were all watching the news on Jan 6th, okay? We know, okay? The State Department's apparent posture towards these two issues, which are paramount and important to the American people, has historically been that they are lesser important than other issues that are treated as concessions in a broader diplomatic engagement, other than an instance to assess U.S. and form of immigrant, permanent, non-immigrant, temporary visas to politely serve diplomatic leverage. Oh, there she is. Her favorite word is leverage. She's like, we should have leverage over our immigrants. Leverage. The word of the day is leverage. To ensure safety and security and prosperity of all Americans, it must change. Below are some key areas of which it could change. All right, let's read these key areas. Visa reciprocity. The United States should strictly enforce its doctrine of when it's issuing visas to all foreign nationals. For too long, the U.S. has provided virtually unfettered access to foreign nationals from countries that do not respond in kind, including countries that are actively hostile towards the United States' interests and nationals. Mandatory reciprocity will convey necessary reality that other countries do not have unfettered right to the U.S. access and favorable visa-based access in the United States than nationals. The State Department reaction to other countries' changes to visa policies should, with respect to the U.S., be streamlined to ensure it can be updated in real time. Okay, she does have some points here. Some. But let's remember that the U.S. loves snatching up people. The U.S. loves snatching up people and using those people against other countries. She's saying that should be put to a stop or a standstill to countries that are actively hostile towards the United States. While that's all good in theory, and it would kind of leverage other nations to behave, leverage, that's the magic word, it would disrupt the natural American tradition of using a nation's people against another nation. So that's going to be a hard sell. But I get it. I get it. Girl, I get it. But we have this tradition of using a nation's people against other nations. So that's going to be a hard sell. But, she got points. She's not all made out of straw, She's not like some of these straw men we had to read about before, okay? She has some points. Section 243D, Visa Sanctions. Visa sanctions under Section of Immigration and National Policy Act, enacted into law to motivate countries to accept the return of any nationals that have been ordered removed from the U.S. should be quickly and be fully enforced. Reluctant countries that do not accept received or returned nationals will risk the suspension of issuance to all immigrant visas. Oh my God, this is ballsy. If you have one of us kidnapped, no visas for your whole country. None of them. Ooh, that's ballsy. Suspension instance to all immigrant visas, all non-immigrant visas, or all visas. Or all visas. Girl, she's going in. These country-specific sanctions should remain in place until the sanctioned country accepts the return of its all removal pending nationals and formally commits to the future regular acceptance of its nationals. Black letter implementation of this law should demonstrate, therefore, lacking seriousness of... Oh, I like this one. Hold on. U.S. immigration law should work federal authorities to accept returning nationals. Okay. So, for example, Russia has a lot of U.S. prisoners, or had a lot of U.S. prisoners. I think they came home. I think the Democratic Party took care of that one. But under her proposal, no visas for any Russian citizen, any Slavic citizen at all until they're returned, which would bring a halt to a lot of what makes a world turn. It is very interesting. This approach is very interesting to me because, I did see a boom in Russian immigration within the past 5 to 10 years. I think there are some parts of the U.S. that are very heavy in its Slavic heritage, like San Francisco and other places. This is a very interesting take. Very interesting. You got one of us, none of y'all coming in. It's leverage. What's the word of the day? Word of the day is leverage. Rightizing refugee admissions. The Biden administration has not supported the collapse of the U.S. border security. The Biden administration has engineered what is nothing short of the collapse of U.S. border security and interior immigration enforcement. Whew. This administration's humanitarian crisis, which arguably is the greatest humanitarian crisis in all modern era, blah, 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 blah. We already know the world is bad. The world is bad. The U.S. refugee admission program ain't doing its thing. Tell me how you're going to fix it in 2 bullet points. Strengthening bilateral, multicultural, immigration-focused agreements. Restoration of both domestic security and integrity of U.S. immigration system would start a rapid revivification of several key initiatives to affect the inclusion of the Trump administration's re-implementation of the Remain in Mexico policy. There it is. There it is. They want to bring back their old boss's policy, the Remain in Mexico policy, which means you got to take border quizzes on the phone while you're stuck in a country you don't want to be in. All right. I like how she's just like, I like how they're talking. They talk global at first, and then they get to the jugular of what they really don't like. And what they really don't like is us fucking Mexicans, so. The straw men have returned. Let's go. The third country agreement's measures to address the influx of non-Mexican asylum applicants at the U.S. Mexico border must be day one priorities. Although the State Department must rein on the C-175 authorities and other agencies, the Department of Homeland Security should retain or regain its C-75 authorities in negotiating bilateral and multicultural security agreements. That all sounds good. But in the last chapter, we just heard how some motherfuckers don't like the Department of Homeland Security, so... Oh, she's under the assumption that the world is still going to be working the way she thinks it is. Oh, that poor thing. She wrote this whole thing thinking that these fucking assholes weren't going to take it all, rip it from the bottom. Oh. Oh. Poor thing. She has no idea what happened the chapter before this. Oh. Evaluation of national security vulnerable visa programs to protect American people. The U.S. State Department coordination with the White House, security focused agencies. La 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 la. The diversity visa program. Oof. The F student visa program. And the J visa program. The State Department's evaluation must ensure that these programs are not only consistent with the White House immigration policy, but also align with its national security obligations with resource limitations. Again, this is something that was mentioned in a previous chapter, that they should focus on student foreign exchange students. They're cracking down on foreign exchange students. You better watch out. While death of affirmative action and watching out for them foreign exchange students. Lord. And these people were worried about another Kent State? The fuck? Okay. Pivoting abroad. Oh. Personal alignment in the State Department's implementing the president's foreign policy. La 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 la. Oh. World. Oh, let me read this paragraph for you. In a world on fire, a handful of nations require heightened attention. Some represent existential threats and safety, security to the American people. Others threaten to hurt the U.S. economy. Others are just wild cards whose full threat scope is unknown. Nevertheless, unsettling. Ooh. The 5 countries in which the next administration should focus on are China, Iran, Venezuela, Russia, and North Korea. Very interesting selection. Very interesting she mentioned Venezuela, because President Dumbass was trying to suck Venezuela's dick during the debate for some reason. So that is very, very interesting. We also have a very, very deep history with Venezuela, because back in the 80s, Reagan tried to genocide most of the natives in Venezuela, leading to the chaos that is now today in Venezuela. So, out of all of them, we are probably most responsible for what happened there than we are in, of course, all the other nations that are across the sea. So, let's see what she has to say. Oh, blah, 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 blah. The Chinese companies who run the people are serious and dangerous, tyrannical. Okay. how is this document not a national security threat? We're basically listing our enemies to our enemies' faces, and they're going to be reading this. So, like, I don't even know if I feel right reading this, because that might put a lot of people at risk. Like, people that are actually on the ground as soldiers doing footwork in these countries. So, like, we don't know. Although, allegedly, we only have footwork going on in Syria. So, allegedly. But you know us. You know the United States, they got boots on the ground everywhere. Shit. You can't fart in another nation without the U.S. knowing. Shit. United States has cost-imposing strategic purpose to Beijing's aggression. Blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to read I've already read like a whole ass China chapter. Let's read about the Islamic Republic of Iran. They have recently had some shakeups. Before I think she was writing this, like, they already had like a very recent regime change. Not quite a revolution, but one of their leaders died and they replaced him with a younger dude. Iran is exceptionally dangerous. There was one rapper I was following that recently was jailed and sentenced to execution for speaking out against the government. So obviously, yes, Iran has some. And Iran also, they don't like us either. They really don't like us either. They also don't like Israel. And you know, the U.S. and Israel are besties. Israel and the U.S. are besties, so that upsets the U.S. So, of course, Iran is in the shit list of nations that extremists don't really like. Ongoing protests of the Islamic Republic of Iran were widely viewed as a new revolution, as shown in the Islamic regime, which has been in power since 1979, when so-and-so became leader, its weakest state in history, and its odds. And it's at odds with not only its own people, but also regional neighbors. Iran is home to a proud and ancient culture, yet the people are struggled to achieve democracy and endure a hostile theocratic regime. What are you proposing? Are you proposing we arm rebels again? Oh, girl, are you gonna go full Star Wars on Iran? Lord. Unfortunately, the Obama and Biden administrations have propped up the brutal Islamist theocracy that has hurt the Iranian people. Oh, now you care about Iranian people. Oh, now you care. Okay, let's go. It's hurt the Iranian people and threatened nuclear war. For example, the Obama's administration's 2015 plan of action was commonly referred to as the Iran nuclear deal, gave Islamic regime a lifeline after the Green Movement in 2009, which ultimately unsuccessful, which okay, I am very much aware of Obama's Iran deal. Obama's Iran deal was to keep Iran in check. As to put the word of the day is leverage. That was Obama's one true leverage over Iran, was that deal. Since the Trump administration did away with that deal, we have lost our leverage over Iran. So if Iran's out of fucking control, it's your guys' fault. It's your guys' fucking fault that Iran's out of control, because the whatever leverage we had over Iran, we lost when we lost that deal. And I know this for a fact, because I actually keep up with this shit. So I call bullshit. We're going to go to the Venezuela part. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Oh, this is a short-ass paragraph. Like, hold up. Like, Iran got 2 paragraphs. China got 2 whole pages. And then some. Venezuela gets 2 tiny paragraphs. I wonder why. It's almost like we did up there and made a mess and feel bad about it. Once a model of democracy and a true U.S. ally, Venezuela has all but collapsed under communist regimes of the late Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. Under the 24 years since they elected the Venezuela president in 1999. The country has violence crackdown on pro-democracy citizens and organizations shattered its once oil-rich economy. Oh, there it is. There it is. They mad that they can't have that oil-rich economy up in their list of nations with oil-rich economies. There it is. Venezuela has oil, and they wanted it, and they can't have it. Ooh, it must hurt, babe. It must hurt seeing your ex with all that oil. Venezuela swung into being the most, if not the most, prosperous country in South America, but also being one of its poorest. The communist leadership has also drawn closer to the United States' great international foes, such as Iran. Yeah, Venezuela is friends with Iran, because you did them both dirty. Yep. Back in Iran, which has sought to foothold in America. Indeed, Venezuela serves as a reminder of just how fragile democratic institutions that are not maintained can be. To contain Venezuela's communism and aid international administration has taken important steps to put Venezuela's communist abusers on notice while making strides to help the Venezuelan people. Like what? Get into specifics. Like what? I'm going to ask some fucking Venezuelan followers, how has America helped you? How has America fucking helped you? Nada. And the last, the boogeyman, Russia. Oh my God, they got bullet points for Russia. She got bullet points for Russia. Hold up. Everybody got paragraphs, but she got bullet points for fucking Russia. One school conservative held Moscow's illegal war of aggression in Ukraine drags on, blah, 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 blah. NATO, other school of conservatives, Ukrainian support has international security interests in America. Ukraine is not a member of NATO alliance, but one of its most corrupt nations in the region. European nations directly affected by the conflict should aid the defense of Ukraine, but the U.S. should not continue its involvement. Oh! So Russia is one of your boogeymen, but you want to pull out of Ukraine. Very interesting. Very interesting. They want NATO and the neighboring nations to be a little bit more responsible over what's happening in Ukraine, which is interesting. Very interesting. But then you wouldn't have Zelensky begging on TV for money, and that's hilarious. I mean,
terrorists.
Not hilarious. Disturbing. All right. So the next little bit of her writing is about the fentanyl problem. And I'm going to tell you right now, the fentanyl problem is a symptom of America's cocaine problem. How, you may ask? Well, in order to make cocaine cheaper, crack, and by the way, it's harsher if you have the cheap cocaine, the crack, than it is actual cocaine. So, America, it had a really bad coke problem. And they really wanted it so bad because a lot of the higher-ups that got Reagan into power, they were on coke. So, what do? Well, they bombarded Venezuela and a lot of those South American countries for their cocaine plants. Like, literal cocaine, the plants. So, yeah, ever since we had to stop that and actually play nice, people have been finding ways to make cocaine cheaper. One of those ways is crushing up fentanyl and putting it with the rest of your powder. Fentanyl's deadly, yeah, but it's a symptom of the cocaine problem that America had in the 70s and 80s. And it had a very rough problem. So the nerve of them saying that the fentanyl problem is Mexico and China's problem is hilarious. Because America has no concept of trying to take responsibility for its actions. What's even funnier is the sections and pages after this are talking about how we should strengthen relations with Mexico and South America because they might fall into commie rule by ways of talking to China and Russia. In order to make up with these nations, you have to rectify what you did. For the love of God, the United States in the 19th went to war and brought troops to Mexico over bananas. If you have a banana in your hand, if you eat that potassium, you need to thank your veterans because they came in fully loaded to Mexico where banana farms were and said, hey, no, you're not getting the money for that. We are. And we're getting your bananas. Okay? That really happened. So, and that's not even taught in schools. In order for America to rectify the flaws that it did and the things that it's done, it needs to apologize and acknowledge the shit that it's done before in order to make friends with these nations that obviously, they're at odds with. These very local nations that obviously they have tampered with. But will we ever see that? Probably not in my lifetime, but God, I love talking about it. The other thing that she writes about is a hemisphere-centered approach to industry and energy, and that's basically her talking points here are basically the left's talking points when it comes to like human rights abusing and not working with nations that do human rights abuses and bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States instead of outsourcing them. They are the same talking points as the left. And so it is boring. It is very boring. What I found interesting was the fact that they're deflecting blame on the fentanyl problem as something that was cooked up by Mexico to get back at us. Girl, America's drug problem is America's drug problem. It decided to make its drug problem everyone else's problem. You can't be calling Mexico a failed drug cartel state and then turning around and making what? Doing what? Doing what, girl? You know. Y'all know. Y'all keep yourselves fed, but leave the rest of the world to starve, and you know it. Poor Venezuela, they got it bad. You ransacked that whole fucking country for its cocaine, and you wonder why they don't want to play ball with you? You wonder why that whole nation doesn't trust you and it flocked to communism? And you wonder why. In order for America to make up for its misdeeds, it needs to acknowledge the things that it's done and apologize. We won't see that in our lifetime. God, we won't see that for probably another 100 years, so here I am just enjoying my time. From here on in, I call the rest of this chapter bullshit. This is where she gets into her what we should do about the rest of the world. And frankly, I don't really give a damn about what she thinks about the sub-Saharan Africa or the Middle East, because frankly, in order to even have a remote smidgen of authority over there, you gotta fix your problems with your neighbors. You have to fix your problems with your neighbors right now. And that is why I don't care. And it's the same issue I have with the left, because they have no idea either. Just the history that we have, you know. Just, her chapter ends a few pages down at page 231. And we get back, we'll be into page 234 about the intelligence community by Dustin C. I don't give a fuck. Because Miss Skinner does have a lot of points, but she still is missing the mark. A lot of her stuff is stuff that the left talks about as well. So if there's any chapter that has any sort of legitimacy of coming to fruition, it's definitely Miss Skinner's chapter because, well, she knows what she's talking about. She's a doctor. But It doesn't address the elephant in the room, and the elephant in the room is that America likes to blame its problems on other nations and then cry foul when shit happens. You want to know why these immigrants are coming from down south? It's because you fucked up their nations a long time ago, and you won't take responsibility for that. And I won't let you forget it. Y'all have a great day.
Look at these hot bitches.
No.
This is my weak arm.
It was my bone.
This is my weak arm. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. You always see tears, right?
White boy wins.
White boy wins. Scoot closer. You want to keep your arm as tucked into it as you can. Use your shoulder and your bicep together and pull.
Oh, fuck.
Poor James. Poor James.
A
little bit easier though. Poor James. It's okay, James.
Isn't it a little bit easier though? You put that on YouTube and I killed you.